Let me tell you what they did in the house where the old woman died. The mirrors were covered, all of them. White sheets, an old tablecloth, whatever was clean and to hand, draped over the glass in every room the moment her breath stopped. Nobody in that family could have told you why with precision. They did it because their mother had done it, and her mother before her. And the gesture came up out of them the way the sign of the cross comes up from somewhere older than memory. I was called there not for the death. The death was peaceful. I was called 3 weeks later when the daughter could not sleep in the room, and the room had begun to feel wrong to everyone who entered it, and a granddaughter had started waking at the same hour each night, weeping, refusing to say what she had seen. Stay with me, because the first thing the family wanted to tell me, the thing they had read on the internet and could not stop repeating, was that something had come through the mirror, that the glass was a door, that on the night they had by mistake uncovered one mirror too soon. Something had entered the house and taken up residence in that bedroom. I listened, I let them finish, and then I had to tell them gently that they had the right custom and the wrong reason. The old priest did not cover the mirrors because a demon lives in the glass. There is no demon in the glass. There never was. What the old priest understood was something quieter and harder and far more useful to a frightened family than a ghost story, and it is what I want to give you tonight. My name is Chad Ripperger. I am a Catholic priest. For many years now, the Church has permitted me the particular and unwanted work of exorcism, the confronting of the enemy where he has been given ground. I tell you that not so you will look at me. Look past me. I am an old man who has spent too many nights in rooms like that one. The cases I bring you are composites. I take the pattern that repeats across many homes and many years, and I set it down as a single story with the names burned off and the details changed so that no real family is exposed and no real grief is sold. The pattern is true, the particular house is not. Hold both of those in your hand at once, and hear me clearly at the start, because I will not say it twice. I am not telling you the devil is behind every grief, every cold room, every child who wakes crying. Most of it is not him. Most of it is sorrow and exhaustion, and a house full of people who have not slept. What I am telling you is that the old wisdom was real, that it protected something true, and that we threw it away without ever understanding what it was for. So, the mirror, let me tell you the house properly, because the house is the case. It was a narrow house in a row of narrow houses, the kind where the families stay for 4 generations, and the furniture outlives the people. The old woman, the grandmother, had lived in the front bedroom for the last years of her life, and she had died there in her own bed with a rosary in her hands and her children around her. That much was good. That much was a holy death, the kind the Church has prayed for in every age, the death we used to know how to die. She had been the last one in that family who kept the old ways. She covered the mirrors at her death. She blessed the threshold with holy water and epiphany. She made the children pray on their knees before sleep, the actual prayers, the Our Father and the Hail Mary and the act of contrition, and then the prayer to the guardian angel every night without exception until they were old enough to leave and stop. And when she died, the keeping of those ways died with her, because nobody underneath her had ever been told what for 400 years the Church provided the laity with specific prayers to address situations in their homes that they could not explain. Most parishes stopped teaching them after 1965. Now, they have all been compiled into a concise, practical guide. Keep it near the door and read the first page tonight. You will find the link to get the book in the description and in the first pinned comment. Ways were 4, so they covered the mirrors for the funeral because that is what you do. And after the funeral, in the slow, numb weeks that follow a death, they took the sheets down one room at a time as the house tried to become ordinary again. And the front bedroom, the room where she had died, became a kind of problem nobody wanted to solve. Her things were still in it. Her bed, her dressing table with a large mirror, the one she had sat before every morning of her married life, her clothes in the wardrobe, the room held its breath. The daughter, a practical woman in her 50s who had not prayed seriously since her confirmation, decided the room should be used. Waste offended her. She moved her own things in. She slept there and she could not sleep. Now listen to what she actually described to me, because this is where it matters, and this is where the modern instinct goes wrong. She did not describe a monster. She described a room that would not let her rest. She described lying awake and feeling watched by the dark shape of the mirror across the room. The dressing table mirror, which by night was not a mirror at all, but a black rectangle that seemed to hold the whole room inside it and give nothing back. She described her own anxious thoughts circling and circling. Her grief, her guilt that she had not visited more, her vanity in front of that same glass over the years, all of it rising in her in the dark. She described the child waking and crying. She described the room growing, in her word, heavy. That is the case. Hold it. Now let me give you what the old priest knew, woven into it, because the doctrine is not a lecture I am pausing the story to deliver. The doctrine is the explanation of the room. St. Thomas Aquinas, when he writes about the soul of a man, does not stop at the will and the intellect. He spends long and careful pages on what he calls the interior senses and on the passions, the movements of the soul. In the part of his great work that treats of human acts, he describes how the imagination retains and turns over the images the outer senses have gathered, how the passions, the fear and the sorrow and the desire are stirred by those images and stir them in return. The imagination, Aquinas understood, does not sleep when we wish it to. It works on what we have given it. Feed it ordered, holy, peaceful things, and it settles. Feed it the unburied, the vain, the anxious, the unconfessed. And at night, when the body is still and the reason is loosened, it rises and it rules. This is the thing the old priest guarded, not the glass, the imagination, the senses. A mirror by night, in a room where you lie down to be still, gives the restless eye one more thing to fix upon. It gives the imagination a dark window with the room inside it. It calls the eye, the very last sense that should be at work when you are trying to surrender, into sleep and into prayer, and it sets that eye to roving. The grandmother's mirror was not a portal. It was a snare for an already grieving imagination, in an already disordered room in a house that had stopped praying. And the gravity of death made it worse, not because the dead haunt the glass, but because the dead are owed something the living had stopped giving. A house where a soul has just departed for judgment is a house that the Church, for all her long memory, has treated as grave ground. You lower your voice, you light a candle, you pray for the soul. You do that chatter about the soul. You cover for a time the things that serve only St. Thomas Aquinas wrote more than a dozen questions on how fallen angels operate. Most Catholics have never read one line of it. This archive gathers that teaching, the 1,614 rite and 4 centuries of documented cases into a single reference. Read it slowly, 1 chapter a night. You will find the link to get the book in the description and in the first posted comment. Only the body's pride. The mirror, most of all, because a mirror is the instrument of self-regard, and self-regard is precisely the wrong posture before the open door of death. The covered mirror said with cloth what the mouth had stopped saying, not now, not vanity now, now we pray. The old Roman ritual, the ritual Romanum that the Church set in its enduring form in 1614, carries blessings the modern household has simply forgotten it possesses. There is a blessing for a house. There's a blessing for a bedroom, for the very place of sleep. The priest goes through the rooms with holy water, and the prayer, he says, is not theatrical, and it is not about expelling a beast from the furniture. It asks God to drive far from this dwelling all the snares of the enemy, to send holy angels to guard those who dwell here, to keep them in peace. The blessing orders the house toward God. It says over every room, this is his ground now, and the things of the night have no claim here. That family had a house that nobody had blessed in 40 years. They had a bedroom ordered to nothing, ordered to the leftover furniture of a dead woman and the anxious thoughts of a living one. They had a child taught no night prayer, lying down each evening with nothing standing between her small imagination and the dark. And they had in the corner a mirror doing at night exactly what mirrors do at night, holding the dark, calling the eye, giving the restless soul one more place to wander. You see now why I had to take the ghost story away from them. The ghost story is a comfort in its terrible way. If a thing came through the glass is the problem, and you can cover the glass and be done. But the truth asks more. The truth says the house had been left undefended for a generation, and a death had simply pulled the covering off the wound. Hear me, there is no demon in the glass. Say it with me if you have feared it. There's no demon in the glass. The enemy is real. The enemy is a person and not a force. And the enemy is far too intelligent to need to live in your dressing table mirror. He does not need the glass. He needs the disorder. He needs the unconfessed sin and the abandoned prayer and the bedroom that has been ordered year by year to vanity and to worry and to the small glowing screens we now carry to bed in the mirror's place. The mirror was never the danger. The mirror was the old wisdom's warning sign, the thing the grandmother covered to teach a lesson her grandchildren were never taught. So I did what the old priest did, and not one thing more. We reordered the room. We took out what served only the dead woman's vanity and the living woman's anxiety. The dressing table went to another room, the large mirror with it. Not because it was cursed, but because a bedroom is for prayer and sleep, and that mirror served neither. In its place, on the wall, the daughter would see last before sleep and first on waking, we hung a blessed crucifix. We set holy water within reach of the bed. We opened the wardrobe and dealt finally with the dead woman's clothes, which is its own kind of prayer, the honoring of the body that has gone. Then I blessed the house, every room with the old prayers, the ones from 1614 that asked the angels to stand guard. I heard the daughter's confession, the first in over 30 years, and the weight that came off her in that small, dark room was a thing you could feel in the air more than any chill she had described. I taught the child her night prayers, the real ones on her knees, and the prayer to the guardian angel who, I told her, had been beside her every one of those frightening nights and was simply waiting to be spoken to. And the room let them sleep. Not because we drove a monster from the mirror. There was no monster. We drove out the disorder. We gave the house back to God room by room, and the imagination finally fed something holy to rest upon, finally rested. Now hear what this means for you, because you did not come to this for a story about someone else's grandmother. The real protection of your home was never a covered mirror. The covered mirror was a symptom of a household that prayed the way a clean kitchen is a symptom of a fed family. You cannot get the protection by copying the symptom. You get it by becoming the kind of house the custom came from. So here is what actually guards you, and none of it lives in a sheet over the glass. Confession. Begin there always, because the enemy's whole claim on a soul is sin, and the Lord gave his priest the power to forgive it in plain words on the first Easter night. Whose sins you shall forgive, and he said, they are forgiven them. That is the Gospel of John, the 20th chapter. The confessional is not therapy, and it is not a formality. It is the cutting of the rope the enemy holds. A house full of people in the state of grace is a house he can do very little with, mirrors or no mirrors. The Eucharist received worthily, not as a habit, not as a queue you join because the pew is emptying. The body of the Lord received by a soul that has first been to confession and is not carrying a mortal sin to the rail. That is the strongest thing that will ever enter your home, because it is not a thing. It is him, holy water by the bed, a small font, a little bottle, blessed water within reach of where you sleep, and the old habit of blessing yourself with it before you lie down. It is a sacramental, which means the church's prayer goes with it, and the enemy has hated it for 2,000 years for that reason. A blessed crucifix where you will see it, not a decoration. The instrument of your salvation hung where your eye lands last at night, so that the final image you give your imagination before sleep is the Lord who has already won. The guardian angel, you have won. He has been with you since you drew your first breath, and he will be with you at your last. And most of you have not spoken a word to him in years. Speak to him at night. The old prayer is 4 lines long. A child can learn it. The grandmother taught it to her children, and they forgot to teach it to theirs. And that forgetting is the whole story of this video. And the rosary, Our Lady's beads, the prayer the church has reached for in every plague and every war and every haunted bedroom, said as a family if you can, said alone if you cannot. The most ordinary and the most powerful weapon left lying unused in nearly every Catholic home in the world. That is the strategy. Sacraments, an ordered room, and the night prayer restored, not a covered mirror, a surrendered house. Now let me tell you why all of this is breaking now in your lifetime in a way it did not break in your grandmother's. The ordered Catholic home is nearly gone. I do not say this to scold you. I say it because you should know what you are standing in. For most of the church's history, the home was a small church. It had holy water at the door and a crucifix in every bedroom and a rhythm of prayer that closed the day the way the day was opened. And the children were handed that rhythm before they could question it, so that it lived in their bodies long before it lived in their understanding. That home raised the grandmother. That home is what she was still keeping alone when she died. The night prayer went first. We stopped kneeling. We stopped ending the day in the presence of God and started ending it in the presence of a screen, lying down with the imagination not surrendered to the Lord, but stuffed in the last waking minutes with everything anxious and vain and endless that the glowing rectangle could pour into it. We replace the mirror the grandmother covered with a brighter mirror we hold to our faces in the dark, and we feed it our restless self-regard, and then we wonder why we cannot sleep, why the children wake crying, why the house feels heavy, and underneath that, the teaching itself collapsed. There was a council, the Second Vatican Council, which sat from 1962 to 1965. The council itself is the church's, and I will not stand here and attack it. But in the years that followed, in the practical handing on of the faith, a great forgetting set in. The sacramentals were quietly dropped as embarrassing. The blessings of the home went unused. The catechesis that taught a child why we cover the mirror, why we kneel, why we keep holy water by the bed, simply stopped. And a generation grew up with the gestures gone and the reasons gone with them. The grandmother kept the gestures. Her children kept nothing. Her grandchildren went to the internet, found a horror story about a portal in the glass, and believed it because nobody had ever given them the true thing in its place. That is why the enemy no longer bothers to hide. He used to need the dark and the secret. Now he can work in a house with the lights on because the house has no holy water, no blessed crucifix, no confession in living memory, no night prayer, no rosary. Nothing standing between the family and him but a half-remembered superstition about a mirror. The covering of the protection is the whole of his strategy now. He did not have to break the walls. We took them down ourselves and forgot we had built them. So here is what I am asking you to do this week. Not someday, this week. Order your bedroom for prayer and rest. Walk into it and look at it honestly. What in this room serves only vanity, only anxiety, only the restless eye? The mirror you do not need where you sleep? The screen you carry to bed and stare into until your imagination is full of garbage? Cover what should be covered. Remove what should be removed. Make it a room a person could pray in and sleep in because that is the only thing a bedroom is for. Put holy water within reach of your bed and a blessed crucifix where your eye will find it last at night. If you do not have them, get them and have the water and the cross blessed by a priest. It costs you nothing and a moment of his time. Restore the night prayer tonight. Before you lie down, on your knees, if your knees will bear it. The Our Father, the Hail Mary, an act of contrition, and the prayer to your guardian angel. End the day with a brief examination of conscience. The old practice of looking back over the hours and naming before God where you failed and where you were given grace. 5 minutes. It will change your sleep before it changes anything else. Go to confession. If it has been years, go anyway, especially then. Receive the Eucharist worthily, which means in the state of grace, which means after confession if you need it. Consecrate your family. Give the house out loud to the Lord and to his mother and mean it and renew it. And pray the rosary. Begin with 1 decade if a full one frightens you. Begin tonight. I will leave you the way I leave every soul who has sat across from me in a dark room and been afraid. The dead are not lost to you. The Church does not believe the soul vanishes into a black mirror or wanders a heavy room. The soul goes to judgment, and the whole communion of saints keeps vigil with it, prays it through its purgation, waits for it in the light. The grandmother who kept the old ways is not in the glass. She is in the hands of the God she died praying to, and your prayers can reach her there. That is the true vigil. That is what the covered mirror was always pointing toward. And if you feel alone in trying to rebuild a praying house in a world that has forgotten how, remember Athanasius, who stood nearly alone against the whole weight of his age and was right, and whose name the Church still speaks. Athanasius against the world. One faithful house is not nothing. One kneeling child is not nothing. You are not as alone as the dark would have you believe. Choose Christ. Choose his church. Choose his sacraments. Choose his mother. Choose the cross, and do not look back. Next time I want to tell you about the wedding ring that a widow could not bring herself to take off, and the year it cost her, and what the old priest understood about the things we will not surrender to God. Until then, keep the light on and keep the cross in front of it.